yesterday in Fulchester Crown Court, Robert Scard, a self-made multimillionaire, was charged with kidnapping and raping his wife Serena. After hearing evidence from his wife, Sir Peter Cutforth, Serena's father, and Scard's butler Beamish, the defence counsel, Mr. Cross, rose to make a startling submission to the court.
Mr. Cross, you have a submission to make.
Yes, my lord. As I indicated last night, my submission is that a husband cannot be charged with the unlawful imprisonment or the rape of his wife, at least where there is no legal separation. And as the prosecution evidence shows that neither Miss Cutforth nor her husband, Mr. Scard, are either divorced or legally separated, consequently, there is no case to answer, my lord.
Yes, I will take some persuading that proposition of the law is correct. What do you say is the principle behind it?
Unity, my lord. The doctrine that the bond between husband and wife is such that the wife is bound to cohabit with her husband and bound to have intercourse with him.
Are you saying that in this day and age a woman cannot refuse to have intercourse with her husband?
I am, my lord, where there is no legal separation.
Oh, no, Mr. Cross, that is no good. The law is not as primitive as that. And besides, there is a recent decision against you so far as unlawful imprisonment is concerned. The case of Reed is against you.
Well, I accept that, my lord, but the case of Miller is for me as far as rape is concerned.
I have it here, Mr. Cross. And in my opinion, that decision was a bad one when it was made 20 years ago, and I think it is even worse now, and I will not follow it.
Oh, my lord, you are bound by the decision. The decision was that of a High Court judge on assize, and, of course, you are a High Court judge, but are merely sitting in the
Mr. Cross, I am perfectly well aware of who I am and where I am without you telling me, and I will not follow that decision. It is a monster, and it is no good you trying to bully me into submission by citing a lot of authorities. You're wasting your time.
Very well, my lord. I see that I can take the matter no further.
No, you cannot. I'm sorry if I appear abrupt, but I think it's a very silly decision. And I mean the one in the case of Regina versus Miller, not mine.
Very well, my lord. I call the accused.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the book in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mr. Scard, what is your full name?
Robert John Scard.
Where do you live?
Most of the time I live at Elm Court, Sheppingham.
You were married to Serena Cutforth in the spring of 1968. Would you tell the court how that marriage came about?
Well, we met in the autumn of 1966, September-like. I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Not that I thought any more of it at the time, seeing what she was and what I was.
So you didn't think of inviting her out or anything?
It never crossed my mind, no more than inviting Bridget Bardot out.
Because you thought she was a different class from you.
Well, that and looking the way she does.
Did you see her again at the end of 1966?
Yes, we kept bumping into each other in odd places like charity dues and so on. She seemed to take a bit more interest in me and, well, in the end I fell for her.
And how did the engagement come about?
Well, I've been taking her out a bit, and then she brought up this business about a loan to her dad. Well, she knew I wouldn't agree. So we made a deal. I know I must have been mad at the time. The deal was $2 million to her father's bank in February 1967, the engagement to be announced 5 months later in July, another $3 million to Dad in September, and marriage in the spring of 1968.
Did her father know?
Not on your life. That's why all the delays were built in like, so it wouldn't look like me coughing up the money had anything to do with the marriage.
Tell me, Mr. Scard, was it a good investment?
Oh, yes, it's gone all right, my lord. I put my mate Alfred Jones on the board, and Cutforth is as right as rain. It's the fastest expanding merchant bank in the city now.
I see, thank you.
Mr. Scard, you separated in December 1971. How did that separation come about?
Well, things had been difficult for a long time. And I wanted to go on, but I just wanted to be given a chance, that's all. But I must admit, things were pretty bad. Well, anyway, one day she came to me and she said, "Let's face it, Robert, it won't work, will it? We're incompatible." So I had to admit that things were pretty bad. They couldn't go on as they were, so she said she couldn't go on, and that was that. Afterwards, I found out she had a fancy man. That's why she left.
You say you discovered she was having an affair.
After she'd left, I found out.
Tell us what had been wrong with the marriage, Mr. Scard.
Everything. She weren't interested in me. I didn't know that at the time, but she just weren't interested in me at all.
Did you and she share the same friends?
No. After the marriage, I started losing my friends one by one, except those that were in business with me. She just never made them welcome. The house was always full of her kind of folk. I was only good enough to pay the bloody bills.
And what was her attitude to having children?
She wouldn't.
Did that upset you very much?
Yes. I should explain that my dad was killed in the war, and my mother died when I was quite young. I've always wanted a family, some relatives.
Why did you invite your wife to Elm Court that night, the night of October the 5th?
Well, I was that in love with her, I wanted her to come back.
You wanted to try a reconciliation after all that had happened?
Yes.
And your wife agreed to discuss it with you?
Yes, I said to come to Sheppingham for a couple of days and we'll talk it over.
Why did you keep the servants away from her and take food to her yourself?
Well, because I'm soft, I suppose you could say, but I wanted to do something personal for her, but besides writing out cheques, to be alone with her, show her that two people could be happy together without servants.
Did you discuss the reconciliation?
Yes, when I took her breakfast on the morning of the 6th. I said to her, how about it, lass? Let's make a go of it. And she asked me what I was going to do about it, because it took two people to make a marriage go.
Yes, go on.
Well, then she said she was tired and she wanted to sleep some more, and I should wake her up that evening.
And did you?
Yes, and we talked some more. And then she said that I didn't love her, that she was just my status symbol. I tried to convince her, but she said that if I really loved her, I wouldn't be so mean. She was always carping on about money. Lord knows I gave her enough.
And then what happened?
Well, then I asked her if I could get into bed with her, and she said she wasn't interested and to go away.
And did you?
Yes.
Did you lock her in?
No.
At any time?
No, my lord.
What did you do then?
Well, I had some jewellery in the flat in London, which I knew she liked. She'd seen it when we were married, and I'd bought it, and before I had a chance to give it to her, we'd broken up. So I drove to London to get it.
Drove to London? That's a 3-hour drive each way.
Yes, my lord.
And you got the jewellery. May Mr. Scard see Exhibits 1 and 2, please? Let's just look at Exhibit 1, shall we? Would you open that, Mr. Scard? Is that one of the things you fetched?
Yes.
And did you give it to her?
Yes, I did, on the morning of the 7th.
And was she pleased?
Yes, she seemed to be. She kissed me, and I tried to get into bed with her, and she said not until after lunch.
Did you make love to her after lunch?
Yes.
And did you spend the afternoon with her?
Yes.
You make love to her again?
Yes.
Did you give her anything else?
Yes, a bracelet.
May Mr. Scard see Exhibit 2, please? Is that the bracelet?
Yes, it is.
Did you give it to her before or after you'd made love to her?
Before.
Now, after you'd finished making love, what happened?
Well, she went to sleep for a while, and then we talked about the reconciliation.
Please go on, Mr. Scard.
Well, she said that she didn't always want to be asking me for money, and that she would only come back if I gave her shares and made her independent.
Did she say how much she needed to be independent?
Yes, my lord. She said she wanted £1 million. That's when we started quarrelling. I wanted to be strong for once. I wouldn't agree. We argued all afternoon. In the end, I said I wasn't interested in giving her that kind of money, that she was selling herself.
And how did it all end?
Well, she explained to me very carefully that if I didn't give her the money, she would have me charged with rape and kick me when it hurt me most by getting me off the boards of all my companies.
Would you like to tell the court how that could come about?
Well, it's very simple, really. The Articles of Association of most of my large companies forbid anyone with a criminal record from being a director. She's got a very good brain, Serena.
So that if you are convicted, you can no longer take part in the management of your companies.
Yes, my lord.
And what was your answer to this threat?
Well, I said I wouldn't agree to such a thing, that I was brought up to be decent. And what happened then is the only part of her evidence which was true. She said to me that I had no conception of what the word decency meant, that I disgusted her because I was an animal, and she used the word animal over and over again.
You would disagree with that description, Mr. Scard.
I'm rough in my manners, my lord. My wife is a well-brought-up, cultured woman, I've always been told. There's nothing more I can say.
And how did the quarrel end?
I hit her and told her to get out for good.
One more question, Mr. Scard. Do you still love your wife?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Scard, you told us that your wife married you as part of a business deal, That she treated you badly throughout the marriage and then left you for another man. Are you now trying to tell us that you were seeking a reconciliation?
It's true.
Oh, come now, Mr. Scard. You invited her to Elm Court because you wanted sex with her, come what may. And as a pretext for getting her there, you said you'd discuss maintenance with her, didn't you?
I wanted to make love to her, yes, the same as I'd wanted to make love to her every night for the 3 years we were married.
And it was just for that you invited her there.
I told you I love my wife.
That jewellery with which you say you bribed your wife to have sexual intercourse, when did you buy it?
I can't remember the exact date.
Oh, then perhaps you have receipts. That would help us to fix the date.
I don't have them.
Why not, Mr. Scard? Your solicitors told your wife's solicitors that you had them and would produce them.
I can't find them.
Mr. Scard, you didn't bring them because you knew that they'd show that you'd bought those jewels not just before the marriage broke up in December 1971, but in August of 1971 when you and your wife were still living together.
No, that is not true.
Because you did buy them in August of 1971 and you gave them to her then, didn't you?
No, that is not true.
You say you've lost those receipts?
Yes, my lord.
It's a fact, isn't it, that you didn't get on with your wife's friends?
That's a fact.
And your marriage broke down because you couldn't provide your wife with what she most needed, cultural, intelligent companionship. You had nothing in common, did you?
My marriage broke down because she never loved me in the slightest. Because she never had any interest in me or of making a go of it, and in the end she got a fancy man.
Oh, come now, Mr. Scard, that's absolute nonsense, isn't it? Have you ever caught her with another man? She's always with a group of friends, isn't she?
She probably sleeps with all of them for all I know.
You say that because she, like her friends, rejected you. She was the first thing you wanted which you couldn't get.
I don't know what you're getting at.
She was an obsession, wasn't she? You had to have her one way or the other.
No, I told you I love her.
So you lured her to
I wanted her to
you
live with
lured
me.
her to Elm Court on the pretext of discussing her maintenance with her, having first made sure that once she was there she couldn't escape. By screwing up the windows and cutting off the wires to the bells in the rooms.
I cut the bells, yes.
Why?
Well, because I wanted to be alone with her and not having her pressing the bell every 5 minutes and having a servant carry a box of matches across the room.
And the windows?
I didn't do anything to the windows.
Then who did?